Hi everyone, and welcome to OCD Victory. My name is Matt, and in this video I want to talk about step number 6 for overcoming OCD, which is identifying the roots of your fears. Now, with OCD and obsessions, they're almost always rooted in fear and doubt, right? So really, when we talk about overcoming it, it's important to target the fear and then really remove that from your life. And a great analogy I like to use is this idea of a weed or a plant in the ground, right? And when you go to remove the weed, if you just cut the weed off at the surface of the ground, it's going to grow back because the roots are all throughout the soil of the ground. So really, when we're talking about removing a plant, you really need to go in and remove the roots of it so that it doesn't keep coming back and back. And that's the same exact principle with OCD. You really need to target the roots of your fears so that it doesn't keep coming back, right? And it's just this process of just like, I'm going to get rid of it once and for all. So, and one thing when I was going through treatment, this was something that wasn't really explained to me. So it's something that I've kind of learned, and the more I applied it to my life, the more success I've had with keeping OCD out of my life. Now this brings us to the question of how do I identify the roots of my fears? And a tool I like to use, and a tool I often suggest to people, are identifying the 6 basic fears, which I've borrowed from Napoleon Hill's work in Think and Grow Rich. Now, when we talk about the 6 basic fears, I want to cover them real brief, and I cover them in much more detail in the OCD Victory program. But the first basic fear is the fear of poverty, right? And that's just basically the fear of not being able to provide for your basic needs, food, shelter, clothing, things like that. And when Napoleon Hill published his work, it was in the 1930s, and the United States had just gone through this Great Depression. So this fear of poverty was real widespread in society. The next basic fear is this fear of criticism. And this is something most people can relate to. This is the idea of being criticized or rejected or poked fun of, right? The next basic fear is this fear of loss of love. Now, this can take place, with this a fear of losing someone you love and someone passing away, or a fear of someone that loves you, leaving your life. And maybe a spouse breaking up with you, or something along those lines. The next basic fear is a fear of disease or ill health or sickness. And this is pretty standard. This is a fear that most people can relate to. This idea of getting sick, especially with some type of terminal illness. The next basic fear is a fear of old age. And what that really means is not so much a fear of being old, but a fear of what comes along with being old. And that could be a fear of not being able to take care of yourself and provide for yourself, and a fear of not being able to physically get around, and a fear of being alone and losing people in your life, and things like that. And the last fear, and the final fear is this fear of death. Now, this is something that everyone can relate to, but it's this fear of the finality of death, and when we're talking about OCD, what you really want to do is you want to figure out what your obsession is, and then kind of trace back to which of these 6 basic fears your obsession is rooted in. And if you click the link below, you'll be taken to my blog where I've kind of outlined an exercise on how to do that. And it's quick, and basically you start off with your obsession, and it's really kind of just tracing your obsession back to which of these 6 basic fears that it's rooted in. And the idea is that when we start introducing exposure and response prevention, which I'm going to introduce in another video, the idea is to really take your exposure to this basic fear level, right? And really remove the root of OCD from your life. And that, for me anyways, has been how I've successfully overcome OCD. It's not so much just targeting the surface obsession, but it's really about identifying the root of the obsession and then going after it and removing it from your life. And that's really how I that was one of the big steps for me for overcoming OCD. So that concludes this video. I want to thank you for watching. For more information, please check out my website at www.ocdvictory.com. You can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter for weekly Q&As. And I will see you on the next video.